Hey, this is Kevin Lyman, and you're listening to the All Punked Up podcast.
All right, what is up, everyone? Allie, Bailey, and I have a very special show for you today, as we have a very special guest who honestly really does not need an introduction. It's one of the godfathers of the scene, Warped Tour founder, Kevin Lyman. Kevin, welcome to the show.
How are you, Tyler? Hello, Bailey, and hello, Allie.
Hi, welcome to the show.
Very good. Thank you.
Feeling in a better mood being on your show than I might have been when I went to bed last night, and then woke up this morning. And
that makes four of us.
There was a glimmer of hope out there right now, So.
Yeah, so for anybody listening, we are recording this episode on the 4th of November. It is towards the end of the second night of elections, so we don't really know who the president is at this point, but it looks like it's leaning more towards Biden. So, Kevin, it is an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on. Whether people know it or not, whether they know you personally, professionally, or only heard about you, you've helped shape and change a lot of people's lives in positive ways. So some people may not even realize it. We here realize that. And for that, we sincerely thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It's nice to be able to do this.
So obviously, this is a weird time we're in. The music industry in our normal way of life has been put on hold due to the pandemic. I think we usually like to start off our interviews, especially nowadays, with, how are you doing during the pandemic? How are you holding up? How are you staying busy? How are you staying sane? All that.
I mean, I'm actually been super busy. I'm also, as I was kind of winding down Warped Tour, I was offered a full-time professorship at University of Southern California. So I'm teaching 5 classes right now at the University of Southern California. And so, I mean, that's a heavy load. Throw in a few capstone projects and some independent study, and that's been busy. Plus, it is a time of, our traditional hiccup in live shows, because we are so dependent in the live business, but it's allowed a lot of kind of innovation and adaptation towards new things. I mean, people are doing more things. I guess I've always been lucky to be a kind of a sounding board for people. So people who have started companies during this time, or artists that are thinking about doing things. I mean, I have more than enough to fill my time. It is tough that we can't go to a live show. But I'm never in a lack of something to be done.
Awesome.
We just had our I Voted concert yesterday. We had over 400 bands play, to celebrate that we have the right to vote in America. It was interesting because it was a bipartisan program, but how in the last 21 days or so, how even voting became a partisan issue. Like if you wanted to vote, you were looked at one way, or if you wanted to celebrate voting, and really, so that was very cool. That just wound down. I think we're just doing some of our rebroadcasts tonight. So, I think it's a little bit of I think we've got a collective hangover almost without the booze background for many of us right now. It's, you just kind of like everyone's been emotionally running at such a high level. I think a lot of it, we're realizing, and we're going to have to explore as a society, was it created by social media and everything? Because look, polling, everything, when people went to vote yesterday, it was a safe experience. With all this rumors about blowing up polling stations and harassing people who wanted to vote, really done. So I think we're at a point in society where we're really going to have some reckoning to do as a collective group to see where we want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So I feel really silly bringing this up now because you just made a lot of really great points about like the state of the world and voting and, our rights and how voting has become like now a political issue, even though it should be a right. I guess on a lighter note, anyone who, knows you and follows you knows that you like to tend to your garden. And I am so stoked that I saw the other day that you are prepping your winter garden. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what are you growing right now? What's your process to make it through a California winter? I really love gardening as well, or at least I used to whenever I lived in Louisiana. So like, I'm really curious about like what you're growing right now. And
Well, I mean, the nice thing about California, we have a year-round growing season, and it's a good transition because we did have to find things to focus on during COVID. I always loved gardening. I also was on the road for 28 summers. That period of time, every summer on Warped Tour or Lollapalooza, I'd get my summer garden started, and then I'd have to leave, and literally it would go wild. Some things would die, most of it would die, overgrown. So I think with it was funny because I was just started posting some of my photos like from Instagram, and they were getting a great response from people at the beginning of COVID, and I think it actually goes into that thing that, to transition, like there was a time like to transition and try new things. So by encouraging people to, hey, go plant a seed somewhere or plant, you can do it everywhere. And people were emailing me going, I'm trying to plant something for the first time. But we get to have a winter garden, and we grow lettuces and we grow bok choy. And I think there's onions out there. There's cauliflower, broccoli, spinach and things. And, it looks like we're not going anywhere for a while. So, we can, try to remain healthy and, eat some of those vegetables this wintertime.
Gotcha. Make sure that you so this is a thing that my dad does in his garden, especially during like winter and spring, especially. Make sure you try and plant some marigold because marigold keeps pests away, keeps bugs away.
Absolutely. If you look at some of those bass photos, you'll see them in the corners.
Oh, really?
Marigold.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
No, I appreciate that, Jeff. That is a great natural pesticide. Planting marigolds between your tomatoes and stuff. It's a great thing. Don't run around and spray your, Raid and pesticides. Try to figure out some of the natural things, like you were saying, Allie, with marigolds. God, this is so fun. We're talking about planting vegetables, and it's like I'm absolutely going to get your punk rock cards taken away. Mine were taken away long ago. Bailey's crawling under the desk, going, oh man, I don't want to be talking about gardening.
Hey, listen, here at All Punked Up, we have layers, okay? We are complex. We are more than just music nerds. We also like to plant stuff.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's, I don't know. It's just, the hope after this election thing is that someone's going to take control of this COVID situation, and tackle it the way it was. I mean, in our business, sometimes I would have to take the heat running my business. I ran a large operation between Warped Tour and all the other events we did. And sometimes, but as a leader, you have to step up and start making decisions. And when this all happened and it was bottom down governance and it was left up to the counties and the cities and the person that owned the punk rock club, should I do a show? Should I not do? Without any guidance. So let's hope. That hope that it continues the way it looks like it's going to for this election, and we can start tackling this as a country. That could be the coolest thing ever, and pretty punk rock if you could bring people together, because we obviously see that how split this country is, and people are going to have to recognize that we are going to have to tackle this issue as a country. Because we can't go on with over 100,000 people already today, and over, what are we going to, 1,000 people and 100,000 people every day it's going to destroy our first responders. They can't keep up with this.
Absolutely.
I hate to go on a detour, take a detour from the things we wanted to talk about.
She's going to go, what kind of ice cream do you like now?
No. That's definitely not my next question. Although mint chocolate chip is supreme, and I will fight anybody that disagrees. Peacefully. I will fight them peacefully in the comments. I talked about this in a previous episode where I saw a video on YouTube, because that's where all videos live apparently these days. It was this journalist, I'm pretty sure it was all gas no brakes, going to a conservative event rally, and this woman said that being pro-Trump is punk rock now. Like, that's what's punk. And I that hit me on such a personal level, because I feel like what it means to be punk, what it means to be a part of this alternative music community, what it means to be for people isn't represented by that community. And in your opinion, I guess, what does it mean to be punk in 2020? Because it used to mean something so different, and I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting. Was punk? Everyone goes, "What's punk?" And I go, "Well, punk's in your heart, And punk is it's always been, willing to really, as punks, we were willing to have discussions with people with counterpoints of views. We were very adamant about what we believed in, but you were willing to open your mind to other points of views. If she wants to say that she was punk rock because she follows Trump, I mean, I don't want to be, because obviously you want to respect people, but then we've obviously lowered the bar pretty low. It's, I don't know, but that in her mind, if that made her punk rock, but I don't know, I guess racist punk rock. We used to have a lot of racists in punk rock way back when, maybe that could have been punk rock. There were segments that were racist. There was, so there was, they would be, I guess that would be anti-immigration. They could say that they believed in that sense, but I don't think I don't know. It's punk rock is really in your heart and how you live your life, and that life could be, just, it's weird. As I say, I'm almost 60 years old now, and I was at it we did Johnny Rotten and Marky Ramone. I'm sure you guys all saw the videos of that event for that documentary. That I was in the punk documentary, and I was at that event, and I'm going, I just don't know if being, I always say it was hard to be punk rock. It was hard to get old in punk rock. And then if you throw in a little ignorance into it, then it's really tough, so I don't know. You just asked me, you just sparked on so many things right now that
I'm so sorry.
I love that punk rock band, like when I say a band, I look at bands like Anti-Flag as a band that doesn't care what anyone else thinks about them. They just go do it. They never worry who they're playing with. They never worry who they're playing for. They just want to get their message out. A lot of the punk rock bands right now kind of bum me out because they're too cool. They're precious. They don't want to be playing with that band or this band, where punk rock bands love to play. I used to do shows in LA, and it'd be like, punk rock bands are like, can I open for Guns N' Roses? Sure. Can we sing a song? We want to get our message out to as many people and as far and wide as possible. And I think recently within the scene of music that I grew up in and saw it became like, I don't want to tour with that type of band, or I don't want to be around this band, or I don't want to play with this. And I'm like, your message is so good. You want to sing it out as loud and as proud as you possibly can to as many people. And if they weren't your fans and didn't really hear your words, get out there and play in front of them so they can gravitate towards you.
Yeah, it's almost like they have blinders on and they're not seeing the full picture of what they can accomplish with their words. So
yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen 1,000 of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so everybody knows, Bailey just grabbed a guitar off his wall that's all stickered up.
And it's bonkers because we're at the exact same place, right? I got this from Warped Tour, right?
Right.
At Mike Records. Tyler and I had this conversation at the beginning of the year, and this, I strongly feel that it's part of an identity, and this might be just selfish, but I want to know if you know that impact that you had for inclusion, to have everybody be a part of it, because I wasn't afraid to put all of these stickers on this guitar. I was inspired to do it by that. Like, oh my God, I can express myself no matter what it is. I can express myself. And I learned that by going to Warped. Like, it was okay to be whatever you wanted to be, just this island of misfit toys, but we all found a place. And then as I got older and more comfortable with myself, I started to get ink. And then I even went away from getting ink that was visible to people, because I was afraid about what people were going to say and what people were going to do. And I just came back around to this by becoming a father, to the point where I'm going to put art anywhere that I want, that I'm proud of, because it's a part of who I am and it's a part of expression. And I feel that ink and music, and it's all a beautiful ideology, and it's all wrapped up in this art and expression and what you want to be. And one, just thank you for helping build that community with the inclusion. And two, I mean, without being weird, like, what is that like to know that you've inspired a generation to be themselves?
Well, I look at it with my teaching now, trying to inspire them to I always say, people said, why did you go, into teaching, and why in that setting? I said, one, they recruited me. I wasn't really looking to go in there. And two, I'm going to try to download as much as, while you still have most of your senses about you, download them into some people so maybe they'll take it out into a broader business and broader world. So every year, every semester I'm working with about 100 different students, and we're doing a lot of philanthropical things. We're doing, we're exploring different types of music. We're getting involved. And these are the students that potentially will run businesses in the future. And I'm watching them going out in the world, and they leave with a little bit of that. You can do good business and do good with business. And that's where sometimes it gets crossed up in punk because people say, oh, you're a sellout, or that's a sellout, or that's a sellout. I always believe that the people that it was okay, like, Brett Gurewitz and Fat Mike and, myself to a point, and we gave back as much as we put in. And the real community would understand that. They felt that, fine, it's great, Kevin, you made a living in what you love to do and you raised a family and you were able to do these things. But you gave back as much as you can. And that's what punk rock was about. You got a lot out of the culture and the lifestyle that you were in, and that acceptance, that kind of like no judgment, that kind of most of the time. And then all of a sudden it's like you get to a point, and I feel very lucky, and you give back. You find, for me, it was always finding places for those young bands in a market that couldn't play on a big show. Having extra tents, every extra stages, sneaking kids into the show if they didn't have the money. I'd sneak kids into my own show for years, giving them the opportunities to be there. But, everyone says, oh man, and I heard right after when I was winding down Warped Tour, a lot of people were saying, oh man, when's the next Warped Tour? What, maybe I should start a Warped Tour. I says, no, you should start something better than Warped Tour. Warped Tour had a great place and a great time. And I did it live. When I started it, I was working on Lollapalooza. I was working, and a lot of people said, what's he trying to do? Start another Lollapalooza? And I says, no, I'm trying to start something completely different than Lollapalooza and see if it works. So I don't know, in this world right now, well, right now, of course, you can't create human soup the way Warped Tour was. But when it comes back, someone just needs to go out and take some of the goods and things and be more than willing to morph something and grab some of those parts and make your own world out there. And by creating your own world, you can go out there and do this for 25 years. Typically people would say like, oh, Kevin stopped doing Warped Tour because he wasn't making enough money. Well, really, I was fine. We made money on Warped Tour. It wasn't about money. It was just, I felt I had done everything with the project that I could. I really did. We put a lot of energy into this. People don't realize that 90% of the things that we did for Warped Tour weren't about making money. They really weren't. They were trying to create the right environment they were trying to create the show that I wish someone had for me when I was growing up. And that 10%, you had to have sound business fundamentals to get it done. And that's running a business. But, most people they come in and they think the bottom line money first. We figured create the right event, and then eventually enough money would come in to pay for it each year. It worked almost all the years. I had one bad year, 2017. It was one of those years, everything goes wrong that could possibly go wrong, went wrong in 2017. I decided 2018, maybe it's time. Let someone else maybe take the reins of their own project. We had our second biggest year, and then we had those two big events, and it went out with a bang. 25 years is a long time for anything. So.
And doing those events has got to take a toll on you.
It was physically is a lot of the reason why I stopped doing Warped Tour. I took it as far as I possibly could to feel comfortable with myself that I gave it my all, because then you can come to peace with something. I gave everything I possibly could to Warped Tour. And the day we drove out of that parking lot, me and my wife drove our Sprinter van up to San Francisco for those last shows. I just was like, I gave this project my all. We left nothing on the sidelines with Warped Tour, but I had nothing left to give to it anymore.
That's the way to go out.
Yeah.
So most people obviously know you from Warped Tour, and I'm kind of glad that we touched on the extra things that you're doing. You're a professor now at a university, but before we get into the Warped Tour stuff, you've also got the Kevin Lyman Group, which is a premier event production and brand strategy firm. I'd like for you to touch on that because that's probably your main thing you got going right now, I'm guessing. So can you talk a little bit more about the Kevin Lyman Group, like what it is and what the agency does?
We do a lot of philanthropic stuff. I have my foundation, the United Foundation. So we're looking to expand that. Right now we're announcing our golf tournament we do for Music Cares. There's a way to do golf tournaments in a COVID safe environment. So we'll be doing our golf tournament. We're talking about some nonprofits are struggling right now. So we're talking about taking over some of their premier events, run them for them, and then donate the money to those causes. I see my life kind of going a lot in that philanthropic world. And then there's all the brands. I was involved with the St. Archer Brewery, helped found that company and was on the board of that. I was with Haley Williams from Paramore. I invested in her Good Dye Young hair dye company. I do things like I work with Benji and Joel from Good Charlotte and Sherry. I invested in Veeps and I help Veeps wherever I can. So right now, I think a lot of my probably where I'm going to probably be for the next, right now there's no rush. People go, are you going to book another festival? Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to even think about it until we get that under control. And that's out of our control. Can we make sure the bands are clean and safe? And we feel we can, but we can't gather large amounts of people together. So why think about it right now? Let's try to keep trying new things. So literally every day I'm kind of, talking to new people. I just joined a board. It's not public of a company. I've joined a couple of boards to help guide business that maybe will help young artists in the future. I'm trying to get my golf game straightened out.
Aren't we all?
It's a good social distancing thing. Kayak fishing, barbecuing is going great. Gardening. Kind of wrecked myself after physically working the way I did for so long. Anyone that knows me from a show, I was in the middle of it every day. I wasn't sitting on a tour bus. I didn't sit in a golf cart. I didn't sit in a production office. The wear and tear in your body. So I had to have a few surgeries to put myself back together and actually take the time to heal. I was in the hospital on February 27th when I really started hearing about this coronavirus, the corona, and watching a hospital transform around me. And I was watching how they were changing protocols and things. And I started asking questions, and people are willing to talk if you ask questions. And I know right when this came out, I did some stories for different people who are writing stories about it. And I made some comments about, I think, the dominoes are going to fall if we lose, South by Southwest. And people were like, fuck Kevin Lyman. I can't believe he's saying this about the industry, this, and this. And I was like, and then a week later, they're canceling their shows. So they told me later, they're going, well, you were right. And I said, well, I didn't. It kind of goes into that, like, I'm not a scientist, so I didn't really want to speak out of turn, but I saw something changing that we must have been aware of. And, it was a really weird time. So to think about doing live shows, even though, like I've been saying, if 19 trucks pulled up in front of my house, I'd have a lot of fun setting them all up in 3 hours and doing a show for my neighbors, if we could. So, yeah.
Well, let us know if that happens so we can make the travel.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I will happily road trip to Cali to do that.
You had a huge impact on all of us. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. We're so stoked. You have zero ego. Was that always, and I hate to ask, but was there ever a time, because we're looking at the roster, how deep it is, and this event, Warped Tour, had such an impact on the music industry. It had an impact just on people's lives, and you're a part of that. Was there a point when you had an ego and you're like, I am the hottest thing under the sun? Or have you always been this humble? Because having this conversation with you is beautiful because you have this wealth of knowledge and you're not walking around like your shit doesn't stink.
No, I was one of those people that worked my way up through the clubs. I worked for 12 and a half years in the clubs every night of the week. Now I loved getting the chance to do that, but I always said, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in here because you go to those clubs and there's always some miserable person that's been there working there for way too long. And music's too important for me to get miserable around it. It never made sense to me why people were, bummer road crews or these kind of things going on. I just feel like I feel I've worked really, really hard for where I got, but I feel also like, I feel somewhat lucky. Maybe it's just not really, I always say it's a fine line between confidence and cockiness. That's what I teach my students, and I said, you have to have that inner confidence in yourself that you can figure what your way out of a problem, or you have to be willing to ask for help. That's exude, and you can exude confidence with that. It's the cockiness that gets people in trouble a lot of times. And, and having a bit of an ego, you have to have that ego and be able to manage it, though, because the ego is not about yourself. It's about that you have confidence in what you are producing. And when sometimes I would say people would say, "Oh, I'm starting another festival like Warfare." I said, "Great, good, go get it." Go get it, because you have the confidence in yourself that you can continue to do what you do. And I'd stay focused and try to stay focused. And I listened, but I wasn't easily influenced from the outside. And then when you make a mistake, just admit it and move on. Don't dwell on your mistakes too much.
Yeah. We have, plenty of people who listen to this podcast, and I'm sure students of yours who want to have a career in the music industry. How do young professionals take necessary steps to become marketable and or partner with entities such as the Kevin Lyman Group or, other similar, companies or entities out there?
Well, I always tell people you want to get involved in live events. And, some people say, well, I only want to work in punk rock. And I said, well, look, that was when I started out, I would work at any show in the world. I would work metal shows one night, work punk shows. I was working Latin music. So it gave me a lot of influences. But it was like, never say no, just take any opportunity. I always tell people, and it's hard during COVID, especially in the live space. And I always say, they go, how do I break into live events? I go do an internship or something for your local wedding planner. Because people don't realize how close a wedding is to a live event. You've got the headliner, which is the bride or groom or bride versus. You've got the band, the supporting cast, which is the groom's people and the people directly involved. Then you have the fan base that's going to be there that has to be taken care of. You're going to have the caterers because you're going to have food. And then you might have to deal with the elements. It's the exact same thing we had. And you might have to deal with a band with having some music and make sure they have a place to power it. It all kind of builds off of that. So I really work with my students to try to place them into things they might not think. And I go, this is getting your foot in the door with something. This is how it gets in the door. And then I explain to them how to go to a conference and be able to work a conference to try to get the most out of things. Right now I've been able to pivot a lot of students into that streaming space. I think there's going to be more opportunities in the music business than ever because post-COVID, we're going to have a segment of society, and it spins into the mental health world that I've been kind of navigating and working in a little bit. I'm not an expert or trained in it. That's the thing. I'm not trained in anything. I just kind of figure it out as I go. But you kind of look at it and go, we are going to have 15% of our society, roughly, if not more, will be suffering some form of PTSD. And they're going to be needing to digest their music in a different way for some time. They're not going to rush back to live shows. So streaming's not going away. There will be less companies doing their things, but there's going to be streaming. A lot of people have gone over and worked with Cameo, which was looked at as a fringe business before this. Today I was just talking to a friend who's doing comic books, these virtual comic books or something with bands right now. Wants to spin off and do some punk rock bands. So I'll take a look at that. He's doing it with mostly metal bands right now. So I think really I always tell people, and I say, when we do go back to whatever the new norm is, it's going to be a business run by 40-year-olds for 20-year-olds. People like myself, there'll be a few of us that if we were good to you guys, we might get a consulting gig for a couple of years. But a lot of people are going to be leaving the business or transferring out of what we do right now. They've been home for the first time. They tour all the time. They got home. They go, wait, I like being at home. Wait, that segment, maybe I can transfer just doing something at home. My skills work well. Managing a logistics for a warehouse or a vegetable company. I could get a job where I can actually come home at night once in a while. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there.
All right. So Kevin, I feel like I know we've already talked about Warped Tour a little bit. But I think we'd be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't go into it a little bit more. What I'd like to do is give our listeners, I don't want to say closure, but to give them a better understanding of the life of Warped Tour and the legacy that it left. To do that, I think we should probably start from the beginning. Like, do you remember where you were when you came up with the idea of Warped Tour? I know you said you were working for Lollapalooza at the time, right, and you were trying to make a version of that. But
well, it was supposed to be the counter version to it. It wasn't supposed to be anything like Lollapalooza. It was if I had my own festival. But I was actually sitting in the snow up in Big Bear. We were just finished an event, the Board Aid. I used to do a lot of charity events where we would have skateboarding and snowboarding and bands playing in the mountains. So we do boarding for breast cancer, board aid. We used to do a lot of benefit shows here in Southern California. Golden Voice was the company I was involved with, pioneers in punk rock shows in LA and Southern California. And, so I was sitting in the snow and I go, this whole lifestyle, I had heard backstage that day someone talk about the X Games, and we'd already been combining skateboarding and music. We were doing events. We had Board in OC. We had these events, and I go, wow, this could actually become known more than the coast. It was usually like a Florida thing. It wasn't. And I said, you know what? For one last summer, I'm going to go out and bring a ramp, or bring some friends bands. From, Quicksand and Orange 9mm and No Doubt and Sublime. I just went to whoever would come with me and travel the country with a skateboard ramp, just promoting this lifestyle that we grew up with. And, got it out that first year. I mean, working 13 years and working 320 shows a year. This was in March and we were on the road by August 1st that year. So it moved very quickly when we went. Wasn't probably properly 100%. It was more just go for it. It was like, I was just do this. I made time to get that real job that people talk about. My first daughter was on her way, and we got it together. Then we went out second year. I was lucky enough to attract the attention of Vans, and Vans became our sponsor, which was an interesting time because punk rock and sponsorship wasn't really accepted at that point. But we would have never gotten down the road. I was trying to do a $15 ticket. I had No Effects and Pennywise, and I think that's where we kind of got legitimized in the punk rock world. No Effects and Pennywise coming from that world. I was the guy who loaded their trucks, loaded their vans, threw people off stage all night, set up the dressing rooms. Up to that point, all music events festivals were kind of created by an artist. Perry Farrell with Jane's Addiction, Blues Travelers with John Popper, and Sarah McLachlan with Lil Affair thing. They were being created by, I'm the guy that loaded the band in LA. I think Greg Graffin from Bad Religions never understood how I ever did this because I was the guy who loaded his van. But it's kind of a joke that I actually amounted to something. So, we end up, we started getting known within the punk rock world. I think those two bands legitimized it with a certain group of people, but it was always an eclectic music festival. If you go back, the Deftones and like even Sublime and Sugar Ray that year. And then, the Blink-182s. And we were right there on that cusp when I was still working in the clubs of LA because we weren't making money on the tour. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like, I started seeing this kind of weird thing going on in punk rock that was becoming more melodic and it was more, accessible in a sense. It wasn't, as aggressive as punk. And that would have been the punk rock or the pop punk phase, and we kind of got into that. Blink-182 traveling on my tour bus with me, things like that. And then, then meeting the guys in Sum 41, their promoters like, oh, we got to put, them on one show. I got to showcase them to you. And then and then I said, oh, they got to come. So it was this really cool network of people and we were all trying to build it. And then in a sense, mainstream radio, which was alternative radio, the K-Rocks of the world, a lot of WHFS and a bunch of stations that no longer exist, had to kind of embrace that music in a way. Even if it was on specialty shows, people were gravitating and we were selling a lot of tickets and it was hard to ignore this movement going on. And, and then we, kind of rode along and then all of a sudden couple bands showed up for a few years with AFI and then My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy. And I go, wait, we're transferring again. But I always wanted to pay homage to where we came from. So that's why you would always have some sort of punk rock, but it was more the music that was singing. That's what Warped Tour was. It was singing to a generation and that generation changed over time. People go, oh, that band sucks. I don't know if they're that good. A Day to Remember, you would hear. And I look at the front row of kids and watching them singing as the same way we would have sang to the Dead Kennedys or Circle Jerks or something that we listened to. So you never judged where it was at. And that's what Warped was. It was a sounding board for generations. But I always believed you brought some of it back. And, later on, as the tour got towards the end, I started realizing maybe we were trying to spread ourselves too far. We had people that were in their 60s touring with people in their teens. There was a lot of generations there, and things have changed not only musically but societal. And some of the things that might had looked at one point as just crude, when there was some controversy when I brought the Dickies out, and some people were offended by the same jokes I was hearing in 1985. They were still saying don't really go over as well in an audience in 2017. So I started to realize we were separating, even though I was trying to keep all this music alive in a way, the generations of people just touring, the audiences changed a bit. And maybe I was trying to pull too much together. So that's in 2018 is when I said, you know what? It's been a good run. Maybe someone else could take over with their own event. I'll go out with that year. And it was kind of a semi-nostalgia year where I really kind of focused on that, like, that person. I wasn't worried about getting new people coming to Warped Tour. I always wanted to get young people to come to Warped Tour. And maybe I was going too young sometimes. But I believe those young people, if I could get them to listen to a young, like a Pierce the Veil or something, and get into the record labels Fearless and Hopeless and these labels that I loved, and Epitaph and I own part of Side One Dummy, get those people in when they're 14, 15, 16 versus listening to no offense against like One Direction at that point or something. Get them to come to our shows. They're going to see a different, like maybe be turned on to something different. So we were trying, and maybe they were too young to be coming to a festival. I mean, the crowd got pretty young at one point. It was, averaging around 15, 16 years old. Great for the bands. They were selling a lot of merchandise. They were getting people turned on to them and everything. But when you brought some of these older bands in, sometimes there was some little weird, there was conflicts out there. So we're trying to span a lot, and, the pressures were getting a little much to when bands were calling me and saying, hey, if I don't get on the tour this year, my label's not going to put out the record. Things like that. We weren't supposed to become the only thing of the summer. And Warped kind of, not intentionally, it was an organic festival in a way. It grew to certain, when, Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance blew up that year, I brought them out with me. And you threw in Avenged Sevenfold playing Warped Tour with a smoke machine, which was crazy. That was funny. I see Matt once in a while. We still laugh about Avenged Sevenfold showing up with a smoke machine on Warped Tour. All of a sudden, and then in that period, it was just, the shows were almost its own success killed Warped Tour. It got so big that I almost went really hard back to the roots and brought bands like Helmet. And I went from having like 8 bands in the top 20 in America. No, it was by accident because I booked them in September, October the year before. They got big that summer. And then all of a sudden I went out with Helmet and real underground, trying to get it back to make sure the core was there because I always believed Warped was there for a person, and they stuck a lot of people stuck loyal to it for a long time. A lot of people would come each and every year. And even that last year, a lot of people came up and says, I've been coming for 17 years. I've been coming for 18 years. Doesn't matter. I just love to come and expose myself to all this. And then people are, you're going to be up for your criticism. There was going to be people that, Warped Tour, sold out, or Warped Tour allowed weird old dudes on it that sell crude jokes, or, it was also hard because I did believe in due process, and there were some artists, there's bad artists out there. There was bad artists out there, but I was trying to figure all this out. So that's why I brought those organizations like A Voice for the Innocent and Hope for the Day, some of those professionals in the field to help me navigate some of these issues that teens were going through. Social media bullying, cyberbullying. What an experience, because I was like a 55-year-old man being cyberbullied all day long. And, it was like, it was like, wow. And I'm supposed to be far along in my life that this crap wouldn't affect me. And it did. And all I was thinking about was, wow, if I wasn't who I was and had the life's experiences and things, this could ruin you. So,
absolutely.
So watching that, and, I was constantly learning from that tour. People might not realize, I think I was teaching people, but I was constantly learning. And that's why I would get involved with so many of those nonprofits and so many things to try to help them, to give them a platform to become national resources for youth out there, because I would realize that we don't have student counselors. A lot of high schools have one counselor for 2,500 students, and they're supposed to also get them in college. So when we could go out and pass resource cards out to people that might have been victims of sexual violence with Hope for the Day in a local market, because I met a bunch of high school counselors who go, we don't have those resources. Wow, give me one of those cards. That's great to have. But it just became a lot. There's a point where you have to kind of go, all right, it's like I need to live my life like kind of in a sense of where I probably should be. and let someone else take it, because it is a full-time, round-the-clock job to maintain something for 25 years.
Not only that, you didn't have a free summer for 25 years.
Yeah, there was no free summer. There was September, October. There was no free days around the house. There's whatever is it right now, November. We would be really rushing right now to get the pre-sale on sale by Thanksgiving. So I'd be grinding my agent to get all the buildings locked in and the building contracts locked in. We were constantly on this treadmill, and I think we're seeing that in society. That's why bands can take time to look at doing other things now, doing comic books, because they're not on tour for a moment, because everyone had a tour all the time to make money, because all our money was coming from tour. We neglected all these other things in life that can enrich your life and enrich your career.
I guess I know that you said that you didn't have a whole lot of it was around the clock all year, job. But in those rare moments where you could decompress, de-stress, what kinds of things would you do to just kind of have just Kevin time? I know that you mentioned earlier that you would garden, but was there anything else that you would do just to kind of ground yourself and come back down to earth from all the stress?
A lot of times on the road, that would mean when everyone took a day off, we had very few days off, but everyone would go somewhere to everyone liked the hotel or a mall. That's where people like to go on tour. I hate malls. I don't necessarily, stay in a hotel. I had a tour bus. So I would take my bus and find a band or two that maybe I didn't know real well and invite them to come out to a lake with me and get patio boats, or go whitewater rafting, or we went skydiving on that tour.
That's really exciting.
And, just those moments are what I remember. People go, what do you remember about work? I go, oh, the day that I kidnapped Paramore and took them out on a boat fishing and just got them away from the managers and the press for a day, or, the whitewater rafting trips. And then I'll run into a band that goes, hey man, I went this to just 15 years ago with you. And I'm like, oh, okay. I forgot which bands were with me, because it was more about the experience of just being around people. You weren't like, oh, I'm with this band, or, rafting on the Rio Grande River in New Mexico. Those were the days, or, those are the things you're really going to remember. So I still do those things. I used to have a tour bus, but that's gone now. And now I have a Sprinter van, and me and my wife can go enjoy and cruise around in our Sprinter van. Not as much as we want right now because of COVID, but we've been able to get out a little bit, and looking forward to that time.
I almost feel, and Tyler opened up as the godfather of the scene. You've seen and nurtured so many people throughout this entire span. Did you have a solid parental foundation at home? Because it just seems that you care so much about these people, and all you want to do is help and level the playing field. And I find it really hard to or to understand or come to grips with. You're so selfless. And I have to ask if there's motivation behind the selflessness of, hey, no, this is what we did. We took care of people. And it was a learned trait is what I'm trying to get at, because it's just, I see no ego. I see selfless. And I'd like to think that that's not programmed, but sometimes it is.
Well, I don't, you start going back through your life and go, all right, what molded you and what shaped you? And, I was adopted. I was adopted, so I don't look at that. It's one of those things where I never was like, oh, I have to go hunt down my birth parents or anything. It was like, I'm being raised by these awesome people. We had a very semi-structured, but not overly strict. We were taught about working. I had 2 jobs since I was we built Disneyland in my backyard, me and my brother, and pull people around in wagons for a penny. And then the parents would yell at us for charging kids to play in our backyard. And my mom would come out and defend us, because she's like, they're just learning how to do business, So maybe all those things that, so I was always working. I was in school. I never, I did good in school. I don't know. I seemed to get through school pretty good. Got into college pretty easy. It was a different time. But no one's ever really given me anything. I never really borrowed money for anyone. I have no debt to anyone. I just believe that people need to be given a chance. And, as people go, what is your greatest, what feels good? And I go, well, we've had a lot of talk about BLM and Black Lives Matter and everything. And it's a process in my mind of I worked in the business when I was in the 80s. There was no women working in the music business, in the live events field, very few. And I said there should be more girls working in this thing. So I just started hiring girls to work my shows. It made things a little calmer too. I always found that they put a little calmer edge to a crazy time when everyone was doing cocaine in the clubs and the manicness of these road managers coming in all crazy. And they'd see these really powerful together women running the backstage at my shows, and it just tempered it. So it made my life a little easier in some senses too, because they weren't manic, they weren't acting crazy. And so we opened a door for touring for a lot of women. Now, there's been a lot of talk we need to open the touring world for more people of color. I said, absolutely, absolutely. But it doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen overnight. It's a long commitment. There's no jumping in and fixing a systemic racism situation. I don't think we have systemic racism. I just don't think certain doors have opened up or people have really reached out. Once we do as an industry, we can open some doors for some people, but it's going to take the next generation to do it. So people who have worked with me, who are now at leadership positions, they're road managing very big bands, can start using the tools we did to open it up in another way. You don't fix it overnight. And one of the best compliments I think I ever got in life, and I'm not a person that lives off of compliments, but when Ice-T was on 1991 Lollapalooza and we became friends, I looked up to him, and he respected me for the work ethic and what I was doing, and I helped him learn how to tour. And the next year, Ice Cube was coming on Lollapalooza, and Ice Cube at that point, he came with the crew, the Farrakhan crew and that crew. So there was a little bit of tension amongst people, white people. And Ice-T took his time to fly up to the first rehearsal, and he introduced me to Ice Cube and said, this guy right here is someone that you need to really work close with. And the only color he sees is ignorance. And that's what I see. I see people that don't take the time to learn. And that's what's kind of killed me in this political stance. You have so many people with so many political opinions, and then you ask them basic questions like, who's Mitch McConnell? And they go, I don't know. Or who is Stephen Miller? And they're no, I don't know. Or, yesterday I was asking my students, I go, all these people that run around and defend the Constitution, to be honest, I'm not like a constitutional law guy, but me and my wife read the Constitution yesterday morning. And then I asked my students in class, tell me the amendments right here. And they go, well, freedom of speech, right to bear arms. Most people can't get past that. It's like, oh, wait, there's something about military being able to stay at your house if not in non-war times, And I said, that's the problem. No one takes any time to learn past the second line of anything. We've gotten stuck on the second line. And ignorance right now, people not taking the time, being manipulated by things like Fox News, and potentially you could say on the other side, just watching one form of news, whether that's MSNBC or something like that. We're 94, 95% of us could get along in this country if we all threw each other in a room and said, no one knows anyone's political affiliation. You're going to find things you don't agree with. And that's some of the things that happened with Warped Tour. It was like, I would bring a counter view to someone else's view, and it all of a sudden blew up online because someone wanted, and it went around, no one did the research on Kevin Lyman. I produced the first Rock for Choice shows. I donate to Planned Parenthood, but we were trying to get Planned Parenthood to come to Warped Tour, and they weren't responding. And then this group came to me and says, we're pro-life. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, tell me about your pro. And they were like, we're actually a pro-adoption organization. And I go, that's cool, because I'm glad someone thought they were pro-adoption when I was born, that you could actually adopt someone. So you're welcome to come to Warped Tour. But we've become so narrow focused, I get attacked for being some subvert to the pro-life movement. And really all people don't know is take the time to me, because by bringing them, it got the people from Planned Parenthood to call me back, and they started coming to Warped Tour. And right now we're so like, they can't be in the, it's like this whole like attacking, and then they attack your family, and then they attack, I'm like, wait, this is just ridiculous, So I've always believed, and I go back to early Warped Tours when we would have PETA and we would have Spam in the same parking lot. They're about two polar opposites, but you know what? It's your choice as a guest to whether to come up and talk to them or ignore them and go run around in the mosh pit all night. I just like to put a sounding board for a lot of things in one place and let everyone kind of find their own path. And that's what Warped Tour was.
All right, Kevin, we know you got to get going, but before you do, we'd like to ask you 7 or so questions in our rapid fire questions segment. Bailey, go ahead and start us off.
If you could have your backyard barbecue, what band would play?
Mishka.
Beautiful.
All right. Converse or Vans?
Oh, Jesus. Well, no, wait. I got to go with Vans. They supported me.
I told you that's what he was going to say.
You never know. Converse emos and Vans emos are
All right.
different.
Contracts are everything. Favorite Warped Tour year?
Oh, God, I used to always say the next one. But I would have to say 2018 was pretty fun. And yeah.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah.
What do you miss most about Warped Tour?
Opening the doors and watching people walk out exhausted, just talking about the band that they just discovered or met, and their moms come up to it. I'll never forget Asbury Park. And it was, I was down on the beach walking, and up on the boardwalk, there was 2 moms kind of waiting for the kids to come out. And the kids ran up right then and go, "Mom, we just met Bert from the Used and Chuck from Simple Plan." And the moms are like, "Nice." And I could just picture those moms coming out and yelling at their mom, I just met Bruce Springsteen, like in Jersey, same vibe. I'll never forget the look, and it was opening the doors, watching the people come in and just getting goosebumps every day.
Nice. Will Warped Tour ever make a comeback in some fashion?
Never. You never want to say never. I've got some ideas, but they might be more towards the charity side of stuff we were doing with Unite the United. I did that big punk festival, the It's Not Dead punk festival out here. That was super fun. That was like with all my friends. I've kind of got a name for my next one. It's going to be Back from the Dead after COVID, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to say never. You never want to. And I think there might be a moment that you want to get a reunion kind of something together, maybe on the cruise ship again or something. That was a lot of fun.
Gotcha. Cool. This is our last rapid fire. So think hard. If you could give advice to younger Kevin, what would you tell him?
Oh, man. Put a cast on a broken ankle. When you tear a ligament in your knee, take care of it, because eventually you're going to have a replacement and a rebuild, and it sucks. So take care of your body a little better. Take care of your body, because, and wear earplugs. We don't want to get tinnitus. My ears ring so bad all the time, and people don't realize it. I tell all my students wear earplugs, and that's why I got my crew earplugs. It's miserable. Of all the things, I'll give me all the surgeries, anything I've ever done in my life, hurt, injuries, cut off my pinky, just all this stuff. The ringing in the ear just keeps going, and it just keeps going, and it makes listening to music harder.
Gotcha.
So, just wear your earplugs. It's not wear your earplugs.
Got it. Cool.
All right, perfect. Well, Kevin, we'll go ahead and close this out.
All right. Pleasure meeting everyone. Tyler, Allie, Bailey. Pleasure. Be safe.
Kevin, thank you so much again for coming on our show. You have no idea what that means to us. On behalf of the whole scene community, thank you for everything. Most of us have fond memories of Warped Tour and the bands we discovered along the way because of it, and that is why we call you the godfather of the scene. I hope we can do it again sometime. And just like that, guys, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us. You can help support this podcast by liking, subscribing, and following this channel. Tell your friends and spread the word. We're on all major podcast streaming platforms, so follow or subscribe there as well. So thanks again. Remember, spread love. Peace.